For better and for worse, this cultural moment that we're in owes a lot to Hulk Hogan. Like, Hulk changed professional wrestling, and then professional wrestling changed entertainment and politics and our expectations of public figures. Hulk Hogan died last week. Today, we're going to look at his whole legacy, the parts where he was a hero, and also the darker parts. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Pablo the Don is here. Damian Abraham is here. Hello to both of you. How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone.
Hello. Hi, nice to have you here. Damian, I'm going to start with you. I think, we can maybe use a scene setter, like this idea of what was wrestling like, before Hulk Hogan came on the scene.
Wrestling was like a lot less consolidated than it is now. There were dozens and dozens of territories across America, many of which united under the National Wrestling Alliance, including the WWF, which is Vince McMahon Jr., the owner of WWF's father. And his grandfather also owned the company before that, right, Pablo, I think?
Yes. Yep, exactly.
So when wrestling kind of got consolidated, though, Vince McMahon Jr. started raiding all these other territories, including the AWA, which is where Hulk Hogan got his start under Vern Gagne,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
One of those. But that's really kind of like what it was. It was it was very local. Wrestling wasn't on cable at the time because there was no cable TV.
Yeah.
So you had your local territory with your local stars, and then you had a traveling champion that would come in for a shot and kind of put over your local star.
Right. So, if you were in Denver, your experience of wrestling would be entirely different than it was if you were in Cleveland. Like, there's sort of like this very localized element to it. And then there's something that happens when Hulk Hogan sort of steps onto the scene because it aligns with this idea of consolidation and wrestling getting bigger and bigger. Pablo, what do you think it was about him that made him so watchable in the ring? I think that's important to talk about because you don't get that big unless you're actually performing or doing something interesting in the ring.
I mean, I think it's the entire character. Vince McMahon, very much coined the term sports entertainment. It wasn't exactly like the pro wrestling of old, the way that a lot of people came up. It was more about the entertainment aspect. How could you tell a compelling story? How could you make these over-the-top characters? And while Hogan's actual wrestling move set was pretty limited, the character itself was so much larger than life, so big. He was a superhero. He had the catchphrases that he stole from Billy Graham. He had the 22-inch pythons that he also stole from Billy Graham. He had all of these elements about him that just made him ripe for Vince McMahon basically consolidating all of the territories into this one and bringing it to a national stage. And he just happened to be that figurehead because he was in the right place at the right time with the right stolen look and character to make it a big national thing.
What I like about this tone, Pablo, is that you're like, actually, as a wrestler, he was maybe not that good. It was more that he was a better showman. What is it about his wrestling that you didn't like?
I mean, at the time in the 1980s, was it passable? Yes. Were people doing the aerobatic backflips and things that we see now? Absolutely not. It was a rarity. Maybe in Lucha Libre in Mexico they were doing that, but Americanized wrestling, absolutely not. To me, he just had 5 moves, and John Cena is known for having the 5 moves of death as well, but it works when the character's great. So the leg drop, the hulking up, the pointing, the entire, the ear thing, that was just Hogan, and it's fine. It's passable. Just not my favorite personally.
The ear thing, as in when he sort of puts his hand to his ear
for the crowd,
for
and
the
he
crowd
really
to
gets
kind
the
of
crowd
hear your
engaged.
roar.
Exactly.
I do that now. I do that now when I'm trying to get just a room full of people be like, is everybody listening to me? So I also borrowed that from Hulk Hogan. Damian, it's important to talk about this idea of Hulkmania because the attention on Hulk Hogan himself, it grew and grew and grew. And there's something about him sort of single-handedly changed the trajectory of professional wrestling. Let's have a listen to this. Oh, we have a clip here. We should be able to hear it now.
He is the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Champion, Hulk Hogan! The roof of the Silverdome about to explode here as the Hulkster greets, and these 93,000 plus greet him. You're looking at the greatest professional athlete in the world today, the world's heavyweight champion.
Right, like he's not doing a lot, right? He's just sort of stepping outside. He's putting his hand to his ear so we can hear the crowd roar, but you also can hear the wildness of that crowd going out of control. What do you think it was, Damian, about his character that drew people in, that made him go, you know what, we want to sort of invest energy and excitement into this guy?
I think it was, like Pablo said, time and place. And I think that's Hogan's, that was his genius, was being able to kind of look around and seeing what was working for other people and being like, yeah, me too. So I think he took the Bob Backlund rah American stuff and then wrote kind of headlines with Vince McMahon and did what wrestling does kind of best at its worst, which is play on people's prejudices and fears. And Hulk Hogan kind of wrote it. And he was, if you look at Rambo, you look at a lot of the sort of stars of that time and the pop culture icons, they were very one-dimensional, you know,
right.
And the sort of idea of this sort of surface level rah America jingoism kind of star is kind of what Hulk Hogan latched onto and rode that wave.
I mean, his theme song is literally "Real American" at this point, right? Like,
yeah, right.
Like he comes out and he says, "I'm a real American, fight for the rights of every man." That's sort of the position of this character. But Damien, I guess like to me, the thing that I'm curious about is a few people have tried that tack, and I don't even mean specifically in wrestling, but just in general. But there was something about Hulk Hogan that made him emotionally connect with people. Sort of people seem to buy that from Hulk Hogan in ways that I don't think they bought it from other people. Is there something that made him different in terms of his ability to emotionally sell that idea?
I was prime for Hulkamania, like as a kid. Like I think I was 5 years old.
I'm surprised you're not ripping off your shirt right now as we speak.
Yes. Yeah. I got some merch, you know, that I'm ashamed to display, so It's locked away now. But I was primed for it as a young kid. But then you get into wrestling and you're like, oh my gosh, Jake the Snake, and he has a snake named Damian. Oh my, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and he's like amazing in the ring. Like I think Hulk Hogan was great at bringing people in the door, but as soon as you got in the door, there's very few people that I can think of that were like deep dyed in the wool Hulk Hogan fans, even before the fall from grace. Like he was always someone that I think was laughed at. Hence why eventually he has to go heel, is because he was just sort of this parody of himself very early on into his ascension. Like it's only, you know, you look at that WrestleMania, was that 3?
That was
clip?
3, yeah.
And you get to the point where he's being booed in WCW. That's only a matter of like 6 years, 9 years. My math is not very good right now, but 6 years. Okay, thank you. Yours is way better. You know, it's a short period of time before he's become kind of a laughing stock a little bit for wrestling fans.
Well, what you're getting at is like there's an inherent limitation. There's an inherent limitation to this sort of all-American-ness idea that he tried to sell. It's a good door opener. It helps the WWF at the time, WWE now, become this mainstream, you know, gigantic thing, because if you've never been engaged with that project, maybe Hulk Hogan becomes an invitation to it. But then once you're in, you're like, whoa, these characters are much deeper, much richer than Hulk Hogan is. And you referenced him going heel. I think that's an important sort of period of time to talk about, because Hulk Hogan goes from the all-American boy who's the face of WWF at the time, and then as you know, the WWF is sort of like cresting its incredibly high 90s era, what Hulk Hogan does is he jumps ship. He jumps ship to WCW, and there he goes from playing the good guy to the thing that you just said, which is he turns heel, aka the crowd is now mad at you. The crowd is against you, and he actually, like, to me, does okay in that mode, which is not a mode that I would have personally thought he would succeed in. But maybe it's worth talking about this, Pablo. What was this period of Hulk Hogan's career like to witness for fans who are like, Hulk Hogan, the ultimate face, is now some kind of heel? What was that like to watch?
I feel like that was probably him in his truest form. He's a heel in real life, and now he gets to play one on television. Like it's tried and true. That's very much Hulk Hogan. I think at the time we have to realize that as a country in America, we were so different. Like he turns heel after Nirvana. He turns heel once like Cops is one of the biggest shows. Trash daytime TV is a thing. So they started infusing a lot of reality elements into wrestling. And at this time, this is right after the big steroid trial, which Hulk Hogan was like supposed to be the star witness of. And he notoriously says that he's taken steroids, but doesn't give any blame to Vince McMahon, which at that time pretty much gets Vince McMahon off. But also at that same time, it kind of shatters this like fourth wall of wrestling where people find out, his real name's not Hulk Hogan. It's actually Terry Bollea. And like him and Vince, like, were actually friends behind the scenes. And like Vince isn't just the commentator, he owns WWF. Like,
Yeah.
it really broke down that fourth wall. And so when Hogan goes heel, he's embracing who he truly is in real life. But at the same time, it brings wrestling to another level. You see him go heel, and then you have the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is exactly who he says he is in 96, 97, 98. You have the rise of The Rock, who notoriously says he is The Rock is Dwayne Johnson dialed up to 10. You have these people infusing who they actually are into the character, which makes this thing just explode even more and have another big boom period.
Damian looks like he's going to add something there. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think it's important, like you said earlier with superstar Billy Graham. I think it's important to mention that he kind of looked at what was happening with two other guys that had jumped ship recently, more recently than him, from WWF at the time, which was Diesel, Kevin Nash, and Razor Ramon, Scott Hall. And both these guys showed up in WCW, started using their real names, and sort of like Pablo said, embodied a reality and embodied a cool, which I think Hulk Hogan, in the same way with superstar Billy Graham, he kind of looked at that and said, okay, or was able to kind of at least ride that wave.
They can borrow something from that. Yeah, they can
borrow that. And it was never as inherently cool as either of those guys were.
No, never.
Should say Diesel, Kevin Nash, great in the Magic Mike movies, but that's neither here nor there. We'll come back to that later. Damian, I want to talk about Hulk as a character, particularly this idea of, okay, he goes from being a crowd favorite to a heel, but then the thing that Pablo just said, this idea of like this match is closer to his real life. Some of the stories that you start to hear about Hulk Hogan is that like he's actually one of the wrestlers who's credited with stopping other wrestlers from unionizing. What is the story there about this idea of him being like, you know what? No, we don't need a union in this space.
I think, surprisingly to a lot of people, wrestling has no form of union, has never had like a real major organized union. And the closest it ever got, according to legend, is when Jesse the Body Ventura was organizing behind the scenes of the WWF. And again, according to legend, Hulk Hogan caught wind. Jesse the Body Ventura says this, but according to legend, Hulk Hogan caught wind of this and went to Vince McMahon, and the office busted the union and kind of shut down the efforts really quickly. And Jesse was kind of pushed out, and it sort of was the last time there was sort of this organized top level pursuit of unionizing wrestling. It's a business where there's no healthcare, where there's a lot of risks, where there's no collective bargaining like you need a union in pro wrestling.
Yeah. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this show is called Commotion. And today we're talking about Hulk Hogan and the way that he changed wrestling, and also the ways that change has kind of rippled out to the real world. And Pablo, what I want to talk about is this pivotal moment, because we've talked about Hulk Hogan in the ring, and we've talked about Hulk Hogan as a character, but something pretty wild happens in 2012, and it's a thing that a lot of us remember as just kind of like genuinely like a shocking moment on the internet, which is like in 2012, the sex tape of Hulk Hogan comes out on Gawker, which is, of course, like now a defunct blog, partly because of Hulk Hogan, partly because of the very outcome of them choosing to publish this. In that particular sex tape, what we hear is Hulk Hogan going on racist, homophobic tangents, using the N-word repeatedly, more than you ever thought a single human being could use the N-word in a stretch of time. What impact do you think that video had on Hulk Hogan's fan base, and also just the way that we see Hulk Hogan?
I think if people before then had doubts about who Hulk Hogan like in real life was, this is post Hogan Knows Best, his TV show. If people had doubts about who he actually was in real life, this tape, everything around this tape completely shattered whatever image was left, right? I think people still hold on to the memories of the character, but this absolutely demolished any thought that he could potentially be a good person. He was already a known notorious liar throughout the years. Multiple wrestlers have called him out for being pathological liar before that. So this just kind of completely ripped the veil off. 100% was like, no, this is who Terry Bollea and Hulk Hogan is. There is no separating. The same guy that you see talking about being a real American is the same guy that would say things like his karma for his son almost killing his best friend would be being reincarnated as a black family. It is the same person, and you cannot separate the two.
I want to talk about that because I do think it shatters something, but also it starts a particular branch of the cultural war, maybe the one that we're still in. But maybe it would be useful to remind people of the actual fallout of, the decision to publish that post. What ended up happening to Gawker after that?
Oh man, Hulk Hogan sues Gawker for an ungodly amount of money. They end up losing. Hulk Hogan wins, and Gawker goes under. And we never hear from Gawker again, even though it was a funny, like, kind of like the Onion type of blog that would just make a lot of satirical posts. But they also had this like sex tape from him that people weren't expecting anyone to get their hands on, let alone Gawker. Like, who gave it to Gawker is really like one of the biggest questions. And I think that alone, that stomping out of privacy, if you will, like people being able to publish these private moments was like a kind of a conundrum, because on one end it's like, should people's private moments be broadcast, but also should people being racist in the privacy of their homes be something we don't get to know about? Like, should these things stay in the dark? And I think it started that kind of like thought process. But at the same time, like you said, it was kind of the beginning of this culture war. And again, Hulk Hogan saw the writing on the wall and rode that wave too, all the way up until his death.
Well, let's not pre-anticipate the way that he rode the culture war, because there's a lot to talk about there. But Damian, first of all, I want to remind people that Canadians might know Gawker as the website that also published the Rob Ford crack video. Like, that was, the first place that people saw it. That it was because of Gawker publishing it. What I'm interested in, Damian, is this idea of the internet that existed at the time, right? Like, this very specific moment of Gawker internet at the time. I think like you were working with some of the folks who were working around Vice. There's something about the energy of the internet at the time that said, even though we hold these people as heroes, it's actually an opportunity for us to question the ways that we, why we put them in this place. How do you think Hulk Hogan factors into that moment of the internet and the ways they sort of like changed us, you think?
It's a really interesting time to look back upon, because that trial was really revealing for a lot of things. Like you're saying, it predicted the sort of culture war moment that we have now found ourselves in, a very horrible time that Hulk Hogan very willingly embraced. But it also, like, I remember, like, I think it was like the editor of Gawker talking about the limits of sex tapes that he would publish, and it was pretty shocking that he was saying there was absolutely no limits in terms of what he was willing to do and what he was willing to post. It was a moment where these things had massive platforms, and you still see this sort of stuff, and maybe it's even uglier in things like soft white underbelly and these sorts of micro platforms that exist now that are doing kind of more sleazy work on the internet, in my opinion, I should say. But that was a time when these things had massive reaches. Like, Gawker was something that people read like every day. Like Pablo was saying, it was something that people embraced. And it was a moment when before there were superstars of social media, there were superstars of platform. And these platforms had a lot of weight and were the subject of national discussions. And I think we look back on this Gawker trial now, and it's something that, well, maybe now it's being studied in law school. I'm certainly not in law school to know, but I think it will be one day.
Yeah, listen, I think of Gawker as sort of like this moment of saying, if we're going to give these people this much attention, they're worthy of investigation, they're worthy of excavation, and what their lives have to tell us is worthy of sort of being exposed to everybody. I think that's a valuable perspective that doesn't maybe exist in this moment in media. But that's let me come back to that, because Damian, it didn't come as like a big shock to a lot of people that Hulk Hogan publicly supported Donald Trump during his second presidential campaign. That decision led us to this moment right here.
I've had all kind of tag team partners over the years, but you, the fans, have been my greatest tag team partner, because you guys have stuck with me through thick and thin, dudes.
So what you're hearing is boos, right? What you're hearing there is the crowd booing during Hulk Hogan's last WWE appearance. How do you think Hulk Hogan's going to be remembered by wrestling fans, given the last 10 years of his legacy, do you think?
Go ahead.
No, I think it really comes down to like your political alignment. Like, if you are someone that is buying into the kayfabe of the Trump administration right now, and MAGA,
kayfabe wrestling term for the thing that is the appearance, the story that is being sold to you, the
facade that's being sold to you, you're very much able to buy into the Hulk Hogan legacy. But if you're at any point questioning what's going on in this world politically, there's no way you can look at Hulk Hogan. It's rare to hear even a racist person say, I'm a racist. Most racist people say, I'm not a racist, but
he explicitly says in one of the clips that leaked out that I am a racist. Yes, that is a thing you hear him say.
He said it with his whole chest. And I should say about the Gawker thing, they didn't leak that part of the tape first. The part of the tape that they leaked was the sex stuff. They held that part back, which a lot of people think is the reason that Hulk Hogan was so keen on suing him, is preventing the racist rant, which they held back for some reason, which to me is, like Pablo was saying, there's an argument of, is this or is it not newsworthy? I think Hulk Hogan having sex with someone is not newsworthy, but Hulk Hogan being a racist, there's definitely, as Pablo said, I would need to know this as a person if I'm supporting someone that is this hateful. But I feel like Gawker definitely leaned into the sex stuff and held back the racist stuff. And then there's also this thing about who did leak the tape. You know, there's this question. Bubba the Love Sponge, another person who's definitely said some pretty racist stuff in his time, was involved as well. There's thought that maybe Hulk Hogan was involved in the leaking of it, allegedly, I should say, speculation. So it is a real ugly moment. And I think that forever shapes the way you're going to look at the Hulk Hogan legacy, depending on who you are.
Pablo, so the thing I'm sensitive to is that in the aftermath of the tape coming out, there was a few years time where WWE wouldn't really touch Hulk Hogan. You know, like there was kind of like there was a bit of distance between Hulk Hogan and WWE, even though he was, you know, crucial to the building of the brand. And then, you know, you hear the stories of how he came to the locker room and quote unquote apologized. Some of the accounts were like, wasn't really an apology so much as him just saying, gosh, it really sucks that this tape got out. In 2018, he's inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that's sort of, even that is received as a bit of a mixed bag, you know, that particular move. I want to talk about this idea of like trying to remember him as a wrestling figure, but also just as a public figure. Where do you think we land on his legacy? Is it something that is like settled for you? Or do you kind of go, no, I think this will be debated for some time?
I think it depends on who you are and how you view Hulk Hogan. Like I said, for me, I was not around for Hulkamania. I came in during NWO Hogan. Hogan has always been a heel in my life. I don't know him as this American
as a real
hero
American
thing.
Yeah,
right. But I have friends that, like, for lack of better words, me and my friends were talking about it. If it wasn't for Hulk Hogan, I probably wouldn't even be friends with some of my wrestling friends because he just made wrestling that big. And I understand people's want and need to grieve that figure going away because they meant so much to, like, tangentially to what happened in their own lives, bringing folks together, things like that. But for me personally, thanks for the friends that you gave me, but I'm not giving you credit for any of that when you've said things that directly harmed me, harmed Black wrestlers, harmed a lot of people, harmed your own daughter. I think people skip over that part of the tape. He was so disgusting to his own child in that tape. So for me, it's cool if people would like to remember him fondly, but don't get out here trying to grandstand on, did you know him personally? Well, Hulk Hogan told us who he was personally. We don't need to go back and forth about that. Hulk Hogan was who Hulk Hogan was, and how you would like to remember him is all right with me. Just don't go at it with each other on trying to prove one wrong or right.
Yeah, like you said, like it's incredibly rare to just hear someone just plainly say I'm a racist, and just sort of like just put that forward out there. You kind of go, well, I think I'm legally obligated to sort of absorb that into the ways that I think about, you know, that person's legacy.
How do I let that go? How do I not evaluate that in life and in death? How is that not part of your legacy at some point? I don't care how many great memories you have. I don't care that you made red and yellow go together. Disgusting. But like, I don't care. You said that you were a racist on tape. I've got to just take it for what it is.
I'm conscious of, I sort of keep seeing all these tributes pour out to Hulk Hogan. You know, The Rock wrote this incredibly lovely, lengthy tribute to Hulk Hogan on Instagram. And it's just like this thing of being like, do you think there's maybe an elephant in the room here? You know, The Rock is like one of the most prominent people of color who got really big in the world of wrestling. There's an elephant in the room that is just like, it goes unaddressed. You know, it goes unaddressed.
I think this also shows just how much of a carny world wrestling is. People could be and do very terrible things, but at the end of the day, you see so many people saying, thanks for the house, Hulkster, aka thank you for making this as big as it is and giving me the opportunity to continue on in this.
Damian, 20 seconds to you, pal.
I think it's also important to know with The Rock that prior to the election with the last election, he told people he was going to sit on his hands and not vote for Kamala Harris, and which is essentially giving Trump a little bit of putting Trump over a little bit. So I don't know. I don't think it's very surprising to me, unfortunately.
That's fair. All right, we got to leave it there. I really appreciate your time. You guys are the best. Thank you for your thoughts and your reflections.
Thank you.
Thank you. Damian Abraham is lead singer of the band Effed Up and also the podcast host of Turn Out a Punk. Pablo the Don is a culture critic and part of Those Wrestling Girls podcast. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We'll see you tomorrow.